Frederick Douglass once said, "Power conceives nothing without a demand." But the reality is a demand conceives nothing without a threat. And so the question that I pose to you is, how do we force institutions that allow systemic injustice to perpetuate itself through them to adhere to the needs of the communities in which they serve? I'd like to point out the fact that not all institutions are inherently bad. And while some may make decisions that have negative implications on your life, that doesn't necessarily mean that those decision makers were conscious nor cognizant of how their decisions affected you, even though they may receive a direct benefit from your pain and suffering. Now, America finds herself in the midst of a social revolution that began a while back but was never completely assessed nor addressed. This revitalization took place approximately 4 years ago when America witnessed the death of an unarmed black teenager named Trayvon Martin. Approximately 1 year later, lightning struck twice when America again witnessed the death of yet another unarmed black teenager. This time, it was Michael Brown of Ferguson, Missouri, a recent high school graduate who had his entire life ahead of him. This sent the black community into an uproar, the likes of which that we haven't seen since the Rodney King case of the 1990s. This sparked protests, demonstrations, and riots. Yet with all of this noise being made, all of this newfound social and political clout, with America's consciousness being risen to heights that we have not seen in this generation, the question is what systemic change have we actually made? And so again, the question is the same. How do we force these institutions that allow systemic injustice to perpetuate itself to adhere to the needs of the communities in which they supposedly serve? Now, perhaps there are plenty of answers to this question, but one that has been historically proven to work is boycott, the effects of taking capital out of capitalism. Just look at the Montgomery bus boycott, one of the biggest wins during the Civil Rights Movement. The story is told like this. One day, Rosa Parks was riding the bus when a white man boards the bus and tells her to get up and go to the back of the bus where she belonged. Refusing to do so at this point in history was illegal, and for that, she was arrested. This sparked an uproar in the black community, where civil rights leaders such as the late and great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to Montgomery and demanded a boycott of the buses. This boycott persisted for over a year, but it wasn't until the city realized that they were losing a significant amount of revenue and that it was beginning to become harder and harder to sustain its economic life that they asked the question, why are we making money? And the answer is simple. People just weren't riding buses like they used to. And upon further investigation, we realized that over 2/3 of the people who typically rode the buses were African American. The city had no choice but to desegregate the buses. Looking back on this, many people see the Montgomery bus boycott as a moral victory, where America simply realized the error of her ways and recognized that it is wrong to treat people differently based off of the color of their skin. But that assertion is false. The truth is it was an economic victory. America or the city could care less of how they treated people, but they were faced with the decision to either desegregate the buses or risk bankruptcy. Now, maybe this was a long time ago, and maybe boycotting just has no contemporary relevance for today. But if that's true, then explain Mizzou. In the year 2015, students at the University of Missouri realized that the same systemic injustice that perpetuated itself in Ferguson was present on their campus. These students band together, calling themselves Concerned Student 1950, the year that the first black student was enrolled into their campus. In an effort to shed light on the issues, these students dared to disrupt their school's homecoming parade. This gained them plenty of attention, but I can assure you, it wasn't the type of attention that they wanted. They were met with racial slurs. Some students were hit with cars, and they received overall public condemnation from the faculty, students, staff, administration, alumni, and even the community. This type of behavior persisted, yet the students persisted as well. Yet it wasn't until the football team threatened to not suit up for a game nor practice until the needs of Concerned Student 1950 were heard. After this, immediately, the president resigned. Might I add that if those football players had not played in any games, the school could have lost it at least a projected $1 million. And that, my friends, is why they adhered to the needs of those students. And this is the power of boycott. But maybe, just maybe, you understand but just can't relate to the struggle of people of color in America. But I think that one thing that all of us as Americans should be able to relate to is the Boston Tea Party. Listen, we have to remember that at this time, Britain was imposing tax after tax on the colonists without giving them any what? Representation. Colonists had had enough, and the Tea Act was the final straw. In an effort to protest the tax, colonists quit purchasing tea. And to ensure that King George got the message, colonists disguised themselves as Native Americans, boarded ships on the harbor, dumped crates of tea overboard, destroying plenty of cargo. Now this cost Britain a lot of money. And looking back at it, many of us would probably refer to these social deviants as criminals or trespassers. But instead, we revere them as patriots. Why? Because we recognize that if they had not did what they've done, that America may not have ever won her independence, nor would we be in the position that we're in today. Now, depending on your race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation, maybe you think that your situation in America is not a good one. But if that's the case, my suggestion to you is to do something about it. Because the one thing that all of us in this room can agree on is that if we want to force institutions that allow systemic injustice to perpetuate itself through them, we know that boycotting works. Thank you.